How are we doing? Are we all just about there? Okay, we're now going to explore what the differences between pedagogy and andragogy might be. And Eric, you were saying that you feel you're not on the andragogic spectrum too much at work at the moment.
Yeah, no, I don't think. Well, me at work, yeah, I'm saying this class is pedagogy.
It is indeed, but we're going to explore the reasons for that. So, we've got pedagogy and andragogy, and we've got this double-headed arrow here. What is that all about? It says it's a continuum, but what is that all about? What does that mean?
It moves from one to the other.
Absolutely. So you need to know as a professional when to be more pedagogic, when to be more andragogic. So you're on a spectrum, so you're shuffling up and down the line between the two, but as a professional you know when to introduce more andragogic or more pedagogic activities perhaps. So looking at pedagogy then, we have this wagon wheel at the bottom of the page there. Now, if you were teaching pedagogically as I am doing right now, where would you be as the trainer in relationship to this wagon wheel? Where would the trainer be?
On the outside.
On the outside.
In the middle.
In the middle. Because you're in the wagon wheel, as learners are learning, it's trundling down the road generating learning. But with pedagogy, it's the teacher that's in the centre of all activities. So the teacher is using the spokes of the wheel to ask the learners to do stuff and then review what they've done. Asking the learners questions and then reviewing their answers. So without the teacher, the trainer being in the room then, nothing would happen. So with pedagogy, the trainer, the teacher is in the middle of all activities. If the trainer were to leave the room, then nothing would happen at all. Now, if you were teaching very andragogically as the trainer, where would you now be? What position would you now be in relationship to this wagon wheel?
On the other.
Completely outside, yes. So you're now completely on the outside, and you are now a facilitator. So what does that word mean then? So you're not a trainer so much, you're more a facilitator. So what does that word?
Just keeping it going.
Keeping your eye
When
on
it dulls,
Yes,
feeding a little bit of information to get it going again.
possibly, but you've given them a structure, often in a resource pack. So there's activities that people do together, but the tutor, the trainer, has thought about that beforehand, and then the learners will do the activity, usually in pairs or small teams. So now the trainer doesn't necessarily have to be there all the time, because the learners are working together to get on with the activity. They don't necessarily need the trainer, but the trainer is, as you said there earlier, Brian, is keeping an eye on things to make sure everything is going as it should be. So the andragogic approach then is more of a facilitator. The pedagogic approach is where the trainer just essentially talks at the learners. But as I said earlier, with andragogy, the trainer has to develop the learning resources beforehand so that the learners work together. With pedagogy, the trainer develops learning resources beforehand, but not particularly involving the learners working together. So that's the key difference there. So anything else then that we need to know about andragogy and pedagogy? Well, let's move on to some examples now on the next page, page 16, where you have a list now of different teaching methods, and in a moment, but not yet, your job is to decide whether the teaching method is andragogic or pedagogic. But we've got two examples to start with. Are we all happy that the example of lecturing is very pedagogic? Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
However, can you tell me why the next example, where the learners do a self-evaluation using prescribed assessment criteria, why is that andragogic? What's the difference now?
It's the teacher is
Because
basically.
you're thinking versus, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Because the teacher has basically set an exercise, and then the students then actually carry out that exercise for themselves. So they're largely pacing it and learning themselves.
Absolutely. They're doing it for themselves in their own way, in their own time, but it's not a free-for-all. They've got prescribed assessment criteria to work to. And the point is they can read that in their own time, because some people will take longer than others to read that. So could you go down the rest of the list then, and you decide whether it's generally andragogic or pedagogic. It doesn't matter if you get anything wrong, but we'll explore all those answers shortly. Over to you. Right, number 3 then, tutor-led discussions, for example, through the use of brainstorming. Is that generally andragogic or pedagogic?
Andragogy.
Andragogic? Any other thoughts?
I would have said pedagogy because the tutor's actually leading.
Yeah, you're quite right. It's pedagogic because the tutor is leading. So that conversation, that discussion cannot take place without the tutor being there. Now, it says brainstorming, and clearly brainstorming is a free flow of ideas. However, let's explore what we did this morning. I asked you some questions this morning. Why are you here? Consequences of poor training. You thought about it and you gave me the answers, and then I wrote your answers down on the flip chart. Now, if I hadn't been in the room, would that flip chart have been populated with your answers?
No.
No. So that's a pedagogic teaching activity. However, I could have done it andragogically. I could have said, right, let's now do a brainstorm. Here's the questions. Could you now work in pairs?
And write your answers.
Write your answers on some post-its and then you stick them on that flip chart. That job would have been done between the pairs, whether I was in the room or not. So andragogy means the learners get on and do it for themselves. They do not need the tutor there to get them, to help them immediately to get it all done. So I can see where brainstorming comes in, but it can be a pedagogic or an andragogic brainstorm. Number 4, researching and then writing essays, reports, projects. It's andragogic, yeah, because the learners are doing it for themselves in their own time and their own way. Number 5, the learners are now solving problems, developing plans. So it's problem solving then, could be case studies, simulations, scenarios. So is that generally andragogic or pedagogic?
Andragogy.
Andragogic, absolutely. They're doing it for themselves in their own time, in their own way. Number 6, the teacher gives a demonstration. Andragogic or pedagogic?
Pedagogy.
It's pedagogic, because all the learners are doing generally is just watching. They're not actively doing much at all. Number 7, role play by the learner is andragogic, because it often means the learner has to, unless they're given a script, the learner has to make up their own text and behave in a certain way that they've decided. Number 8 and 9 are very similar. So we've got peer teaching and demonstration done by the learners.
That could come under both.
Possibly,
Because
yeah.
you got peer teaching, yeah, but then they're doing research and things which comes under andragogy, but
Yes.
the peer teaching comes under
Pedagogy,
So
absolutely.
it's both.
Yeah,
For me.
it is indeed. So there's a bit of pedagogy in there, but I'll explain why it's a small component. So for both of those, what are we going to go for, andragogy or pedagogy? Andragogy in general. Now let's go back to your point there, Dave, which is very valid. Clearly, if the peers are teaching, it's still pedagogic. But we've got to ask ourselves the question, where does most learning take place? Is it in the preparation to do the teaching or the demonstration, or is it in the actual delivery itself? So where will most learning take place for those learners? Is it in the preparation or the delivery? In the preparation.
Yeah.
Because we now have an emotional consequence. People now realise they're going to be on show, either teaching their colleagues or demonstrating their colleagues, and they've got two choices. They can either do the preparation very thoroughly and then look good and feel good when they do the peer presentation or the demonstration. But they know if they don't do the preparation very thoroughly, they're going to look bad and possibly feel bad. So there's an emotional consequence of not doing the preparation well. Now, if everybody's doing the preparation well, they are learning. So that's why clearly there is a bit of pedagogy, particularly, well, in both of them.
In both.
But you really want them to do the preparation very, very thoroughly. So the pedagogy is a small component to get to the andragogic goal, which is what we're after. Lovely, thank you for that. We'll explore that in a bit more depth in a moment. Number 10, we've got teacher-led question and answer. Pedagogic. Number 11 then, we've got peer evaluation using prescribed assessment criteria.
Andragogy.
It's andragogic, so it's very similar to the example number 2, self-evaluation using prescribed assessment criteria. They're doing it in their own way, in their own time. Number 12, pair and small group working discussions, debates.
Andragogy.
Andragogic. And 13, tutor-led PowerPoint presentations.
Pedagogy.
It's pedagogy, absolutely. Now there's a question resulting from this. As a trainer, is it easier to teach pedagogically or is it easier to teach andragogically? What do you
It
reckon?
depends.
Student.
It depends on what you're doing or what you're trying to get across.
Well,
I would say pedagogic.
Yeah.
'Cause it's
Pedagogic
more
is easier.
structured.
you're quite right. With pedagogic, it's easier because you're going to come in with 100 slides of PowerPoint and you know in the next 8 hours you're going to go from slide 1 to slide 100. Obviously there's going to be discussion along the way, but you're in complete charge of the buttons sliding in 1 to 100 of those slides. Now with andragogy, it's harder to start with, but it becomes easier with time. So you're right in a way there. Because with andragogy, you've got to prepare and think about very carefully how to get people working together where they do most of the work with the resources, and they can't do anything unless you've developed user-friendly resources where all the answers are to be found. Because you're now not using your voice, you're using the resources to tell the story, which is where the preparation comes in. Also, who has complete control, really, under pedagogy and andragogy? So who has complete control with pedagogy? The teacher. Who has complete control with andragogy? The students, in a way. They've got to believe that they're in charge, but actually you've masterminded the whole event beforehand anyway. But the point is, with andragogy, things might deviate from how you think things might go. Now that could be very productive, but it could also be very destructive. So you've got to think very carefully and be prepared for surprises along the way, because you're not in control. Right, we'll come back to pedagogy and andragogy time and time again, and tomorrow you'll be doing some teaching using complete andragogy for 15 minutes in Teams. So you'll get an idea what it's all about. You probably do lots of it anyway.